There are moments in life when the world outside feels distant, and the quiet inside feels heavier than it should. When Mira Lane moved into her small apartment on the edge of the city, she hoped the silence would help her paint again. Instead, the days slipped by untouched, and loneliness settled in the room like dust on her unused brushes. Before we begin, if you love soft, healing stories like this one, gentle moments, quiet lessons, small signs that change everything, consider liking this video, leaving a comment, and subscribing to this channel. It helps these stories reach the people who need them most. Mira spent most afternoons staring out the single window that overlooked a narrow, colorless alley. Nothing ever changed out there. No movement. No sound. Just stillness. Until one afternoon, a flash of red cut through the gray. A cardinal landed on her windowsill, close enough that she could hear its wings. It didn't fly away. It simply watched her. And in that moment, the silence in her life began to shift. Mira Lane sat alone in the far corner of her apartment, knees pulled close as she stared at the blank canvas propped in front of her. Afternoon light pushed weakly through the single window, stretching across the wooden floor in a thin, pale line. Dust floated through it like tiny drifting stars, but nothing in her room moved. Not the brushes, not the paint jars, not her. Silence had become her daily companion. Since moving to the city, she hadn't made a single friend. She barely spoke to anyone. Days passed without sound, except for the occasional hum of cars below, or the faint creak of a neighbor's floorboards. The quiet was supposed to help her create. Instead, it made the loneliness sharper. Her gaze drifted to the window. The view offered nothing but a narrow alley squeezed between two buildings, always resting in shadow. No faces, no color, no life. She wrapped her arms around herself and exhaled, the breath soft and tired. Just paint something, she whispered, but the words felt hollow in the empty room. Then, something flickered at the edge of her sight. A flash of red. Mira blinked and leaned forward. There, perched on the windowsill only inches away, sat a bright red cardinal. Its feathers glowed against the gray alley backdrop, as if it had brought a piece of sunlight with it. It looked straight at her, calm, certain, present. Mira's breath caught. For the first time in weeks, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt like it had been waiting for something, or someone, to arrive. The next afternoon, Mira sat at her desk with her sketchbook open but untouched. She wasn't expecting anything different from the usual quiet, just another slow, shadowed day passing by her single window. Then she heard it. A soft flutter of wings. Mira turned quickly. There it was again, the cardinal, perched in the exact same place as yesterday, bright red feathers glowing against the gray alley like a piece of living flame. It tilted its head at her, eyes sharp and strangely curious, as if it recognized her from the day before. Mira hesitated before standing. Yesterday had felt unusual. Today felt intentional. She stepped closer, careful not to move too suddenly. The cardinal didn't flinch. Instead, it shuffled a little nearer to the glass, tapping its beak once, lightly, almost politely, as if greeting her. A tiny smile touched her lips before she realized it. Without thinking, she reached for a pencil from the desk. Her hand hovered over the blank page of her sketchbook. She wasn't sure why. Maybe because the bird felt like color in a life that had lost all of it, but her fingers began to move. Soft lines, a curve, the outline of a wing. The bird stayed the entire time she sketched, watching her with an almost patient stillness. When the drawing started to take shape, the cardinal chirped, a single short sound, then lifted off the sill in a burst of red and disappeared into the alley. Mira stared at the empty space it left behind. For the first time since she'd moved, she felt something stir inside her. Something close to inspiration. Something close to connection. The next morning, Mira woke earlier than usual. She didn't plan to. She just did. Her first instinct was to glance at the window, hoping to see a flicker of red, but the sill was empty. The alley was quiet. The city air sat still and pale beneath the rising light. Even without the bird, something inside her shifted. She walked to her desk, picked up her brushes, and gently touched the bristles as though greeting an old friend. Her sketch from the day before lay open beside them, the first thing she had drawn in months. Mira stared at it for a long moment. A simple outline. Nothing more, but it had weight and warmth. She dipped her brush in a small jar of paint, mixing shades of crimson, rose, and deep amber until she found the color that felt closest to the cardinal's feathers. Then slowly, she pressed the brush to the canvas. The stroke was soft, then another, and another. As she painted, she found herself speaking without meaning to. "Where did you go?" she whispered. Are you coming back? Her voice sounded strange in the quiet room. Gentle, curious, alive. Halfway through adding the bird's wing, a faint tapping reached her ears. Mira froze, brush suspended mid-air. She turned toward the sound. The cardinal was back, perched on the sill, just as before, watching her, responding to her voice. It chirped softly, tapping its beak once more on the glass. Mira felt her heart lift in a way it hadn't in months. She smiled, small but real, and turned back to her canvas, painting with the red bird's presence warming the room. The following day, Mira set her canvas by the window in anticipation, heart carrying a quiet eagerness she wasn't ready to admit. She even left a small corner of the window open, just enough for sound to drift in, just enough to feel connected. Hours passed, but the cardinal didn't come. She kept glancing up from her brushstrokes, waiting for a flash of red, a tap on the glass, a soft flutter of wings. Each time the sill remained empty, the room felt colder, like the silence was returning, heavier than before. By late afternoon, Mira stopped painting. The colors on her palette dulled, her inspiration thinned. The apartment felt smaller again. She sat on the floor with her back against the wall, hugging her knees as she stared at the window. Where are you? She whispered, voice trembling more than she expected. She hadn't realized how much she'd come to rely on the bird's presence, how much it had softened the loneliness she'd carried for months. The sun dipped lower, shadows rising along the alley walls. Still no cardinal. A hollow ache pressed into her chest, the familiar ache she thought she had escaped. The loneliness she had buried began creeping back into the room like an unwelcome guest. By evening, the windowsill remained empty, the silence unbroken. Mira blew out a slow breath, her eyes stinging. Maybe I imagined it, she murmured, though the words felt wrong, because the part that hurt wasn't just the absence. It was how much the presence had mattered. The next morning, Mira couldn't bring herself to paint. She paced around the apartment instead, glancing at the window every few minutes as if the cardinal might simply appear if she wished hard enough. But the sill remained empty. She finally decided to step outside for fresh air, something she hadn't done voluntarily in weeks. Pulling on her oversized sweater, she descended the narrow stairs and stepped into the cool afternoon light of the alley. For a moment, everything looked bleak and gray. Then she heard it, a soft, familiar chirp. Mira's heart jumped as she turned toward the sound. Perched on a low wooden fence at the end of the alley was the cardinal, feathers glowing, head tilted, watching her with the same quiet certainty it always had. You're here, she whispered, almost afraid the words might scare it off. But the bird didn't move. Instead, it fluttered once, landing a few feet ahead on the ground, looking back at her as if waiting. Hesitantly, Mira took a step, then another. The cardinal hopped forward, leading her through the alley's curve. She followed its bright trail until she reached a small shop tucked between old brick buildings, a place she had somehow never noticed. A wooden sign hung above the door, Harper's Art and Supplies. The cardinal perched on the sign for a long moment, chirping softly, before flying up to the nearest rooftop. Mira stared at the shop's warm, glowing windows, feeling something she hadn't felt in months. Curiosity, possibility, a quiet, unexpected opening. She stepped toward the door. A soft bell chimed as Mira pushed open the door to Harper's Art and Supplies. Warm lamplight spilled across rows of brushes, notebooks and jars of pigment, each one glowing as if waiting to be touched. The air smelled faintly of wood, old paper, and something sweet, like cinnamon. Behind the counter stood an older man with silver hair tied loosely at the back. He looked up from organizing a row of watercolor pans and gave her a gentle, knowing smile. First time here? He asked. Mira nodded, hands tightening around the strap of her bag. I didn't know this place existed. It's easy to miss small things, he said kindly. Most people walk right past without seeing the light. His words settled into her quietly. She looked around, letting the space warm her in a way she hadn't felt in months. Her eyes landed on a set of fine brushes near the front. She reached for them instinctively, drawn to their delicate tips and wooden handles. The man watched her with soft interest. Those are for detail work, he said, for people who paint with their heart more than their hands. Mira felt her breath catch, not from sadness, but from being seen. When she placed the brushes on the counter, the man added a small sketchbook to her bag. This one's on me, he said. Every artist deserves a first page. Mira stepped outside into the fading light, her new tools in hand. The alley felt less cold, less empty. Above her, the cardinal landed briefly on a nearby gutter, chirping once before flying off, almost as if approving her purchase. For the first time, Mira followed the sound home. Back in her apartment, Mira placed the new brushes gently on her desk, as if setting down something fragile and precious. The room still felt small, but not as suffocating as before. A soft glow seeped through her window, warm, diffused light, the kind that made colors look richer. She opened the sketchbook the shop owner had given her. The first page stared up at her, blank, waiting. Mira dipped her brush into a fresh pool of crimson, her hand steadier than it had been in months. She began painting the cardinal exactly as she remembered it. The tilt of its head, the roundness of its chest, the sharp contrast of red against the gray alley backdrop. With each stroke, something softened inside her. She painted another scene, herself at the window, the bird outside watching her with patient certainty. Then another, following the bird through the alley toward the art shop. Soon color spilled across the pages, gold light, warm reds, gentle shadows. Her world was returning, one brushstroke at a time. A soft flutter of wings broke her focus. Mira looked up. The cardinal was back. It perched on the windowsill, closer than ever before, feathers glowing in the late afternoon sunlight. Mira reached forward and for the first time, opened the window fully. Cold air rushed in. The cardinal chirped, bright, clear, almost joyful. Mira felt something unfreeze in her chest. "I'm glad you came back," she whispered. The bird hopped a little closer, as if answering, and Mira realized she wasn't painting alone anymore. As the sun dipped behind the rooftops, Mira placed her final brushstroke on the page, and set her brush down. The room glowed with a warm amber light, softened by the open window. Her walls, once bare and colorless, were now covered in sketches and paintings. Red wings, soft feathers, warm scenes of light and life returning. The cardinal remained on the sill, peaceful and steady, its small body silhouetted against the fading sky. It wasn't just a visitor anymore. It had become a presence, a symbol of the simple truth she had forgotten. Even the smallest connection can open a door inside you. Mira sat by the window with her sketchbook on her lap, listening to the cardinal's soft chirps. She didn't feel the heavy silence anymore. She didn't feel trapped inside her own thoughts. She felt accompanied, grounded, alive. The narrator speaks softly now, echoing the lessons Mira discovered. 1. Loneliness begins to fade the moment you let light in. 2. Healing often starts with a small sign, not a grand moment. 3. Creativity returns when the heart feels seen. 4. We are not meant to move through life without connection. 5. Even one tiny presence can bring warmth back into a cold room. 6. And sometimes, hope arrives on the windowsill, bright red and waiting. As evening settled, Mira whispered, "Thank you." The cardinal chirped once, soft and certain, before resting comfortably on the sill. For the first time in a long time, Mira didn't fear tomorrow. She had color again. She had connection again. And she wasn't alone anymore. If you stayed with this story until the end, thank you. These quiet moments, these gentle tales, they're meant for hearts like yours. If this story touched you, even in a small way, please take a moment to like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe. It helps this community grow and allows more people to find comfort in these soft, healing stories. Your support truly means the world.